Digital gold is a different thing, though. We're moving toward a world where 1 billion people, in the next 5 years, 1 billion people will have Bitcoin. I think by the end of this year, 200 million people will have Bitcoin. We're adding them at 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 million a month. Well, there are two great pernicious, what would be the word, myths. One is people, the greatest thing you give someone is a job, and the other myth is inflation equals CPI. Okay, inflation doesn't equal CPI. Inflation is the rate at which the things you want to buy go up in value. So if you want a house, the inflation rate was 11%, not 1. And if you want to buy stocks in the S&P, the inflation rate was 20% or 25% or more. So the pernicious lie is that inflation is CPI. It's not true. And the second pernicious lie is everybody wants a job. They don't. What people want is Social Security. I'd like to be able to not work for the rest of my life and care for my family and do what I want to do. So if you work for 20 years, you save up all your money and you buy a bond that pays you $50,000 a year in income, you have Social Security. People want Social Security. They want to be protected. They want to be able to have children, have a horse, live in the country, write their book, paint, right? Study. They want to be able to do what they want to do without having to work their fingers to the bone 90 hours a week, right? That's what they want. So if the bond costs $1 million and pays 5% interest, it costs you $1 million of life savings. But when the politicians lower the interest rate to 2.5%, you have to come up with $2 million. And when they drive the interest rates down to 1%, you have to come up with $5 million. And when they drive the interest rates to 50 basis points, you have to come up with, 20 or $10 million, right? And so there's hyperinflation in Social Security. And so when the banker says, we're just going to keep interest rates low in order to give you a job, well, you could also say, we're going to keep making assets more expensive, so you have to work forever, and we're going to enslave you to work forever, right? I'm giving you a low-paying job getting paid in a currency which won't buy anything, and you're going to have to do it until you're age 80. Okay, it's not a good thing, right? I'll leave you with the thought here. The road to serfdom consists of working exponentially harder for a currency growing exponentially weaker. That's the myth, right? We have to break out of that mindset. And that means strong currency is not bad, and not working is not bad, right? In fact, if you want to live a good life, you have to accumulate assets, and those assets have to be strong assets. And those assets, in the current environment, the assets are like a sail. You could almost say it's like I'm in a rowboat and I'm rowing, that's manual labor, and the wind is blowing 5 knots in my face and I can barely keep up with it. And then when the wind blows 20 knots in my face, like when the money supply is expanding at 20%, the wind's blowing 20 knots. I can't row forward anymore. I'm going to never get to my destination. I'm going to starve to death. So what do? You put up a sail and you turn the boat around and you sail with the wind, or let the wind blow you, or crosswise. And now you go 20 knots without working. Okay. If you don't look at the yacht the boat behind me, you need sails to cross the Atlantic. The assets are sails when the wind is blowing, and the wind is the rate at which the money supply expands. So if there was no wind, if the money supply was expanding at 0% a year, you have to go do something, because your assets are not going up in value. Actually, they'll go up. Your assets will go up in value at the rate the economy grows. They go up in value 2% a year, but you probably got to go do something else. But the wind blows when the money supply expands to 10%, your assets go up 10% doing nothing, right? And so the pernicious thing that happened in March is if you're on Wall Street and you have $1 billion in assets, you made 25% more doing nothing. You had the best year of your life. And if you're on Main Street and you generated $1 billion in cash flow, you have to work 25% harder in order to do nothing, in order to get nothing, right? If you work 25% harder, you got nowhere. If you're on Main Street, and if you're on Wall Street, if you went nowhere and did nothing, you got 25% more, right? That's the paradox of the rowboat versus the sailboat. And that's why if you want a business strategy as a business, it needs assets in it. And if you're an individual and you want a life strategy, a financial strategy, you need assets. And the only question is what's in your asset portfolio. And my view is that the apex asset, the best property in the world is Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is property in cyberspace. And if it was property in California, it'd be taxed by Californian politicians. But if it's property in cyberspace, you can move it to Wyoming or Florida, or you can move it to Switzerland, right? And it's a property, but all you're doing is just holding monetary energy forever. It's very simple. Whereas a stock, it requires that you compete against a competitor and keep upgrading the product, and it's got lots of moving parts. It's very complicated. And so if I have to, and real estate, well, real estate is capped at CPI. If you're holding a rent, like, you can't raise the rents faster than CPI. So if the money supply is inflating at 15% and the CPI is 2%, you have a negative 13% real yield on the real estate. And you're trapped in the jurisdiction where you can't move the warehouse or the building. So real estate's not so good. Bonds, of course, are awful, because bonds are just long dated cash. You're locked into a currency and you got a negative 10% real yield forever. And so what are you left with? Scarce art, diamonds and gold are commodities. You can create more of them. Scarce art, Da Vinci, Picasso, baseball cards, collectibles, trophy assets. I would say, Jake, buy the house you want to live in forever with cheap debt, because it'll always be valuable to you, right? So if there's an asset that you and your family value, buy that. That's simple. Buy Bitcoin because it's the dominant crypto asset network in the world. Makes sense. Other things, buy scarce assets that you think. Buy something you think a wealthy person will value in 10 years. If you think they're going to want to buy that from you, it's going to hold its value. But don't buy things they can make more of. Not everything's created equal. Like, yeah, your real estate, if it's in Palm Beach, it went up by 30% because that's rare. If it's in the Hamptons, it went up by 50% because that's even rarer. If it's just a house, it went up by 10%. That's good. But if it's land, well, I can find 20 acres of land in Kansas. It's not going to go up, right? If it's an apartment, well, if someone punches up a skyscraper next to mine, then my apartment gets devalued. So buy the most rare thing you can that's most difficult to devalue and is hardest to manufacture more of. What loses its value the fastest? Things that are hot, just electricity, right? Like, I can copy your music 1 million times. Things with a low manufacturing cost, with a high fixed cost. I'm stamping out 1 million candy bars on a factory, or I'm stamping out Fritos or manufactured goods with a high fixed cost, a low variable cost, low energy content. That stuff, it's not going to go up in price that much because you can make a lot of it at a low variable cost.